Okay, we're going to get started. Hello, everyone watching this through the Wakefield Human Rights Commission and the Wakefield Library. And thank you, WCAT, for hosting this. I welcome you to the Wakefield Human Rights Commission's annual commemoration of International Women's Day. In keeping with the 2022 theme of Break the Bias, which asks you to imagine a gender equal world, we are featuring a panel of local women whose families immigrated to the US from around the world. They will share their experiences, challenges, and achievements. We encourage you to share your suggestions of how to break the biases against women who immigrate to the US using the chat. Also, ask questions for the panelists in the chat. Just for everyone to know, International Women's Day is a global day celebrating and raising awareness of the social, economic, cultural, and political achievements of women. The day also marks a call to action for accelerating gender parity through lobbying and through fundraising for women-focused charities. You may wonder why International Women's Day is celebrated on March 8th. The first National Women's Day was observed across the U.S. on February 28, 1909. In 1917, March 8th was chosen for the celebration as it marks the day when women in Soviet Russia started protests for the right to vote, which was granted that year. For a full history of the observance, please visit the International Women's Day website. I said this before, but I will say it again. The Wakefield Human Rights Commission would like to thank WCAT and the Beebe Library for their assistance in making this program possible. So thank you, everyone. We are going to go around and we are going to do introductions. I'm going to ask each of our 5 amazing panelists that to quote their name, their family's country of origin, under what circumstances did they come to the U.S., meaning why did they emigrate here? I'm going to start, so I'll set the tone. I'm taking moderator's prerogative. So my name is Maureen Butt. I am a town councilor in Wakefield. Really honored to moderate this panel with you. My family, my parents immigrated here from Pakistan, which is in Asia. And my dad came here for work. He came to be a physician to first in Michigan and then came to Boston a couple of years later. So that's my story. And I'm going to call on people. And so the first nodding head I saw was Teresa.
Hi, thank you for inviting me today. So my name is Teresa Aravena Gonzalez. I am originally from Chile, South America, and I actually came to the U.S. when I was 12. I moved here with my sister, my brother, and my mom to live with my dad, who had already moved to the U.S. a while back. So just a bit of my story, just wanted to point that I actually moved in February, and in Chile in February is summertime. So just on a side note, when I was a teenager, we didn't have phones or Google or any of that. And I wasn't as curious as my son is. And I didn't really look up anything about the US or where I was coming or when I was moving to. And it was a very unpleasant surprise to find out that when I landed here, it was freezing. I had summer clothes. I wasn't ready. Nobody had mentioned that to us. And honestly, we didn't even think about asking. So that's always part of my story. I always share that because I think as a kid, it's kind of like a shocking thing when you just come. You think it's summer everywhere, but it's not. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing that. Summer?
Yeah, hi, my name is Samara. Thank you for the opportunity. Thank you so much. My name is Samara Latal. I'm from Jordan. I was born in the United States when I was back in 1981 when my father and mother were here as students. Then they moved back to Jordan and I grew up there. And the first thing about this country, when I landed here, I got lost in the airport in New York. And I couldn't communicate really well because I know some English from school. I was 18 years old, but it wasn't enough to give me the right direction, where to go or what is my connection airplane is. And they told me, just sit here. Just sit here. They didn't tell me anything else, because they thought I don't speak English well because like I dress differently.
Thank you for sharing that, and we will hear from all the panelists as we have some questions. Next, I'm going to ask for Cindy to introduce herself.
Hi, I'm Cindy Chow Rodrigue. My parents immigrated here in the 1980s from China during the aftermath of the Cultural Revolution, and basically for more economic opportunities. I'm the oldest out of 4 children. We're all born here. It was me, 2 sisters, and a younger brother. I grew up in Quincy. Then I went to Bentley University for my undergrad degree. And then after college, I lived in Quincy for a little bit. Then I moved to Newton. Then I was in Wakefield for 9 years. And now I'm in Newburyport. And I currently live here with my husband, that's from Maine, and I have identical twin boys. So I think I have a lot of different background from where I've been, and even moving here in the last 2 years, I've tried to figure out where do I fit in, my identity, and then having identical twins adds an extra layer of complexity about, thinking about all this stuff that's going on in the world and how I view myself and how my kids will portray themselves, and how do we have the talk with the next generation.
That is great. We will get back to that conversation. And next I will go to Saratine.
Hi, everyone. I want to start by thanking the Wakefield Human Rights Commission for pulling this together, and as well as Maria Muti for inviting me. And lastly, our town councilor extraordinaire, Maureen Butt. Thank you for moderating. My name is Saritine Elizabeth Resuto, and I am a proud immigrant, excuse me, that came to this country when I was 8 years old. My country of origin is the Dominican Republic. It's a small island in the Caribbean, and we share the island with Haiti. I am from a small town called San Pedro de Macorís. We're known for our great university. It's called La UCE, and that stands for Universidad Central del Este. Our beautiful, vibrant people, and very happy, I should say. It's also contagious when you're around us, as you probably experienced when you're around me. And for producing the best Major League Baseball players in the entire island. We're known for just the majority of the baseball players that play in the major leagues that are from the Dominican Republic are from this San Pedro de Macorís, this small town. We even have a song that's about San Pedro de Macorís. You can look it up. It's in English, part Spanish. It says a lot about our city. The artist that sings it is Juan Luis Guerra. He's a Latin American musician that graduated from Berkeley. Anyway, so yeah, that's me. And thank you again for having me.
Thank you. We might, in our closing minutes, have you sing that song. So prepare your voice. And then finally, my fellow book club member from Books by the Lake, Stephanie.
Hi, everyone. I'm Stephanie South. I'm from Germany originally, and I came to this country, to Wakefield specifically, when I was 26 years old. I came to go to graduate school here. Locally, I got a degree in international relations, then went on to work as an editor and journalist, focusing on environment issues, specifically they needed somebody who had a little Western European background and spoke some Western European languages, and that was me. So I ended up doing that for 8 years, then was home with my family for a while. Both my kids went through the Wakefield Public Schools, and they're almost past college now. More recently, I got a second degree in library science. I'm currently work as a school library teacher in Waltham. And at the elementary school where I teach, I work with a lot of kids with an immigration background. And I always enjoy telling them that I did not, English is not my first language, and I did not learn to speak English until I was in 5th grade. So my 5th grade newcomers and it's very encouraging for my 5th grade newcomers to hear this. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you, Stephanie. So I have a couple of questions to go through, and we've got, I don't know, about 30 minutes to go through the questions. So I'm going to ask, feel free. I have some people that I'll call on. And if there's anything else you want to do, just shout out, raise your hand, and we will get through this, but happy to learn more about all of you. So I'm going to start with question one. And today, so I'm just going to ask you, I love the airport story, but talk a little bit more about you and your family's expectations on coming to the U.S. How were these expectations met, or how did they fall short, other than the weather?
Well, the weather was definitely a huge one. But no, I think just thinking back of that experience and just being 12, I think the goal was to obviously come and live as a family with my dad, kind of to be reunited with the family. I think that was the goal. That was what my mom always wanted. I think the idea that I had of the US was a lot of like brick buildings, almost like New York, like in the middle of Manhattan. That's what I picture, like everywhere it's going to look like. So I was shocked to find out that that wasn't it, that I moved to Winthrop, which is a small town near the water. So it was kind of interesting for me to kind of figure that out. But I think in regards of being a family, that was the priority for my mom. And that's what she always told us. We were eventually going to move. So that was the goal. And I think that was definitely met. But I think as a kid, it was definitely not as it was on TV. And I was a little bit disappointed at that for a little bit, but I got over it.
That's great. No tall buildings in Winthrop.
No.
Same question, Stephanie. What your family's expectations on coming to the U.S.?
Well, I came by myself. My entire family, blood family, except I only have in-laws here. My family still live in Germany. And I think I want to talk about what I was not expecting, which was to have to explain each side to the other as much as I did. Because there were quite a few times when the two countries did not necessarily see eye to eye on things. And I always kind of felt it was my role to say, okay, this is why they're doing this. This is why they're doing this. So there was a lot of, I really wasn't expecting that to happen as often. You always think of, the two countries are very similar in many ways, but in some other ways, as I said, you get, there is a need to figure out why they're acting a certain way. And I kind of felt it was my role to help explain that a little bit.
That's a great example of playing mediator and explaining one culture to another. And then Summer, same question for you. So you came back to America at the age of 18, but how did life in the U.S. Meet the expectations or fall short of the expectations?
Well, let's say half, in the middle. Like, I didn't expect, like, when I wanted help, I could find it, like, back home. like everybody hurry to help and be like helpful around you. Here you have like to ask the right person for it. Nobody like could give you an advice or any word that could help you unless he knows. Not even like maybe look over there, maybe see the signs. One of the things that I said, I got lost in the airport because I was waiting for my luggage, and my luggage got delayed, and I was waiting. I didn't know I missed my connection flight to Boston. And the guy next to me, I asked him, thanks God he was speaking Arabic. He said, you're almost missing your flight. So I tried to talk to other people on a gate, and they said, just wait. And then I waited, and then they said, they took me into a bus. I was supposed to go somewhere else in an airplane. Why am I in a bus? So I got freaked out, and I started asking in English, and they didn't answer me because nobody know where I'm going. And I didn't know that all the people in the bus going in a different areas, not in Boston. Some of them going to Texas, some of them going. So I thought we're all going to the airplane going to Boston. And I was like freaking out why nobody's answering. And some of them look at me weirdly like she's crazy or something. And I was like, no, just like I'm lost. In the end, I'm supposed to be in Boston by 9. I came at I was in Boston in 4 a.m. Finally. Yeah.
That is something that, that's expectations of the kindness of strangers probably fell short here. That's great. Sadatine, I'm going to go to you for the next question. Can you talk a little bit about what did your family leave behind or have to give up by immigrating? And then also, because that's a negative question, but what did you get in return for the sacrifice?
My mother left behind her children initially. My brother and I stayed behind because she came to the United States on a work visa. And so we stayed with different relatives in the Dominican Republic while she started the process, which is a very long process of petitioning for us to be able to join her. So it was one of the hardest things to leave us behind. I know it was a sacrifice that she made that was, as a parent now, I recognize how hard it might have been for her. She also left behind a profession in government that she worked hard to secure as a minority woman in the Dominican Republic. She left behind her family, and they were deeply rooted in our culture, religion, our daily practices, her friendships. So I can only imagine how hard it must have been for her. She left behind a corrupt government and an uncertain future in a country with extreme levels of poverty. What we gained as a result of coming to the United States was a shot at the American dream, the promise of a brighter future for her children, a new culture, a language that I've yet to master. It's hard when you have two languages and but the opportunities that I have been able to have at my fingertips as a result of coming to the United States, I would have never in a lifetime thought that that I'd have that opportunity being from a third world country like the Dominican Republic. And it's a great country. And you wouldn't know that it's like the level of poverty is so extreme by living there because everyone is so happy and just living for each day. But anyway, I feel like coming to the United States was a blessing. And I am fortunate to be part of a great country and have dual citizenship. Thank you.
Cindy, can I just ask you what your family left behind or had to give up by immigrating, and what rewards did you get from doing it for the sacrifice?
I guess since I didn't leave the country, so from my point of view as like a first generation children, I think the biggest thing for me is we left behind family. My mother is the youngest out of 6, but she was the first one to immigrate here. My grandmother immigrated here when I was about in my first grade, and she lived with us. But to this day, I've never met my grandfather that's no longer here. I still have uncles and aunts I've never met, still in Hong Kong. But the thing is, most of my cousins and aunts and uncles are now immigrated here in the US, but that wasn't until I was in high school. Sorry, I just have to pause. So what did I gain from all this? I think what I gained was me, like if my parents stayed in China, me being a girl, me, my 2 sisters probably wouldn't even be here with the one-child law in China. And then the other thing is, I wouldn't be speaking here. And I think like I'm really opinionated. If I was to be in China right now, even if I was the first child and only born, I probably wouldn't be as open-minded and like as outspoken as I am living here. So I think that, those are the things that, me and my whole family is a reason of why my parents came here.
Thank you, Cindy, so much for sharing and for your honesty and transparency. So thank you for that. I do want to say here, as a child of immigrants who my parents were also the only ones of their family, or my parents were the only ones of their family who emigrated and left Pakistan. And, I do want to take a moment to acknowledge that how much one of the benefits of social media, right? So growing up, we would get a call every Sunday. It would have to be through an operator. It was very expensive. And there was one phone in my grandparents' house that everyone ran to, and we called every Sunday. Like that was the thing we did. And I was fortunate to visit them, right? And it was a whole different culture, different language growing up. And now every single one of my cousins and my aunts and most of my uncles like have Facebook. So I know exactly what they're doing. They know exactly what I'm doing. We call each other on WhatsApp. I mean, the world, there is something to it being a little smaller and being able to maintain those relationships that I think makes it a little easier of maintaining those relationships as we immigrate, as people immigrate and emigrate throughout the entire world. So I just wanted to just share that there is good in Facebook and social media and emails and all and video telephones. I'm going to go to Teresa again for the next question. Can you talk a little bit about some of the challenges faced once you were in the U.S.?
Yeah, definitely. Language was definitely and still is a challenge. I learned in school in Chile, they teach you English, but way back when I was learning it, it was very basic, and the pronunciation is completely different than how people speak in like real life, and especially in Massachusetts or Boston. I mean, to learn how everyone speaks here, it's a whole different language anyways, but that was, I started school 4 days after we arrived to the US. So I didn't speak any English. My dad just put us in school. We had all our classes were in English. I just sat there and was like mute for the whole day. I followed somebody along that I had to follow for their schedule. And I sat there and I was quiet. I think that was the hardest and the most challenging, especially for a 12-year-old. I couldn't communicate. I couldn't talk to anybody. I would just go home and then talk to my mom and my siblings, which it was nice, but it's still not the same that you kind of want to do at that age. So it was very challenging because I had a really good, nice group of friends. And it was extremely, extremely hard for me to kind of disconnect. And obviously back then there wasn't Facebook, phones, the same thing. Like to call somebody was so expensive that we really had to pick, like one of my siblings would pick like that one friend they could call. And then I had to wait for the next time that I was allowed to call a friend, and it had to be quick. And it was just, and we would write letters, but the letters would take so long to arrive. And by the time they got there, the news were old. So it was just very, I think for me, language was extremely, extremely hard. And just so to tell you like a little bit, like I didn't know anything about the town where I lived or anything. So one time I missed the bus and I had to get to my house. And the only way I knew how to get to my house was the bus route, because that's what I had learned. So it took me so long to get to my house because I followed the bus route because that's all I knew. So it's kind of one of those things that just like, now you think about it, you're like, oh my God, that's so funny. Or that's so stupid. I should have done this or done that. But that I didn't have any other, and I didn't ask. And I think it was the same thing. You were afraid to ask. You didn't know how to ask. Half of the time, probably didn't know the right words. I remember one time I invited somebody to my house to eat soap. And they were like, soap? And I was like, yeah, my mom made soap. And they're like, oh, show me. And they went to the kitchen and it was soup. But I didn't know how to say the right word. So anyways, this just tells you a little bit of challenges.
Language is always going to be an issue. I like this question. So all of you are going to answer it, and we'll go around. We'll do Stephanie, Cindy, Saratine, and then Summer. But what were some challenges you faced once in the U.S.? And you can speak yourself or your family, whichever one you want to answer.
Are we going in order? Okay.
Yeah, let's do Stephanie, Cindy, so people hear less of me.
Okay.
Stephanie, Cindy, Saratine, Summer.
You want me to talk about bread? I spent my first few years in the United States desperately missing good bread, and it's only been in recent years. We're German. We're all about the carbs. And getting used to it. It's gotten so much better. We can get all the good food now, but and also at some point discovered the German food store up in Peabody, and that made life so much nicer. But that on the less serious side, but it was a bit of a challenge. I can also speak to the communication issue, communicating with family, and the benefits of social media. I've got my nieces and nephew on Instagram and Facebook, so sometimes I like, okay, is that what you're doing? Okay, but they read. It definitely has become. I've been here for most of my life, which that was really weird when that hit me, that I come here at age 26. I am now 58. So I've actually spent more than half my life in this country, which is kind of weird to think about because I spent a fair part of my life in my home country. And, so I do remember, Maureen, when it was you had to make that one phone call, and that was, and now you have WhatsApp, you have everything. That has made things much easier. The last thing that I want to mention is social interaction. I do feel that, again, as similar as the two countries are, there are definitely different ways of communicating. Americans in general are friendlier, but also sometimes a little more, it's like, do you really mean that? It can be hard to gauge. So that's, it took some getting used to, being around different people who had grown up with somewhat different social expectations. So.
So for me, if I think back to my childhood, living in a community in Quincy where as the Asian population actually grew as I got older, I felt to help keep my challenges at bay. So I don't feel like I had challenges as a child being Chinese. It actually wasn't until I went to college in Waltham at Bentley that, we were made more aware on diversity issues because that's what the college had for every freshman coming to school, not knowing where everyone's from. We talked more about stereotypes, and it wasn't till college that I started to feel different. And that's when I was like questioning more about what I ate. Is what I'm eating correct or not? Should I, like, all the stories that I think everyone think I should have all these certain challenges when I was younger. I don't have them. So it wasn't until I went to college that I started questioning it, because I grew around people that was like me. I wasn't in like a little town being the only Chinese girl. I wasn't adopted. So it's only then that, I questioned my identity a little bit more. And I think the moving around different towns that I've been in has made it a little difficult.
Thank you, Cindy. Summer, do you want to go next?
Yeah.
Okay.
The challenging was that's same everybody having the language, the English, and finding jobs, traveling to taking the bus or the train to where I want to go. It was always a problem for me, unless like somebody like someone knows how to reach the destination, give me the specific directions without getting anywhere lost again in the city. So I was like everywhere. In the first year, I was like walking on foot the most because it's the most thing I feel safe, not getting into a bus. I don't know where I'll be going. I was walking a lot in the beginning. Then I got used to taking the buses and the train. And after when I started working, same thing, the language was an issue. A lot of customers, like if they say something like outside the work, I don't understand what they say. It's just like I know around my work, how much is this, what is that, the stuff I know about my work. Otherwise, no. It was like a kind of challenge, even if like, and even after like a couple of years when I had my kids and I know how to speak English really well after like 3 years. And the thing is, the challenge, if I go to the doctor and I want to explain something, either the doctor was thinking I'm not understanding English well, or I'm not like, I don't know how they act. Like, it's kind of weird until I find a good doctor that she do understand and she realized like I'm a mom and I know what's wrong with my kids. That's one of the issues too. Like when you go to the doctor office with the baby, they think you're not like understanding that the baby and he cries and poop and those stuff. But when a baby cry over or he have, let's say, I'm sorry about this word, diarrhea or gonorrhea, whatever. And you said he didn't have a diarrhea like 2 days ago. And they said, no, it's normal. No, it's not normal. And it goes like back and forth between me and a doctor or a nurse until they got it that the kid got sick from something. And the first thing they ask if he have a fever. You said, no, he doesn't have a fever or she doesn't have a fever. They go right away assuming that's something normal. But the kids, if they're crying and you tell them they're crying, They assume you don't speak English. They assume you don't understand, and they assume your kids has nothing wrong. You know what I mean? So the language was an issue, and the communication with the people was an issue in the beginning.
Yes, I think the cultural competency and people understanding other cultures and not just assuming that you're not smart when you know your child and you know how you're feeling. But because there's a language barrier, they think that you're dumb.
Stupid.
Stupid. Yes. And diarrhea is not a bad word. So we can say diarrhea. But I think the cultural competency comes in, right? There's all assumptions made, which is why we're trying to break some of these biases, but that you don't understand your child. You can't explain what's wrong. So the child's fine. I
have the example for it. If you want me to share about this story in specific, I still have it memorized in my brain, how I suffer. My daughter was really sick. All of a sudden, she got sick. She was like 40 days old. And I was like really worried about her because all of a sudden she got diarrhea. All of a sudden it was abnormal. It wasn't like normal diarrhea. And she was 40 days old. She only take breast milk. So I was like, I went to the doctor the second day and he started like, no, it's okay. Kids got diarrhea. And I was like, no, it's not okay. Then at night, I remember that I saw blood in her diapers. So I told him there was a blood. And I told him there was a blood in the diapers. And he thought like I'm crazy or something because she was like still baby. And he started like, tried to cover the subject. He doesn't want to talk about it. And thanks to God, she just pooped in the clinic. And I changed her diapers. And I looked at her diapers and I was like inside her diapers. And I said, look, she have a blood in it. That moment, he just took the diapers to the lab and they examine it and they figure out she have a salmonella. She got it from my watch. I was washing chicken and something got communicated. And she sucked on my wash little bit and she got it 2 days before. And this is the point this is the point where I'm talking about, because I was wearing my hijab and I don't speak English really well. And I tried to explain to him about the blood and about the crying she having and about the abnormal baby in my hand, that she's not normal. And he was like, no. He just tried to ignore the whole entire situation. So he thought I'm dumb, but when he saw the diapers, he agreed to take the sample to the lab in that moment.
Thank you for sharing that, Summer. Yeah, there is a need to advocate. I think all immigrants and children of immigrants and family of immigrants, we have to really advocate for ourselves and for the well-being of our family. We'll talk more about that. Same question, Saratine, to wrap this one up. What are some challenges faced once you were in the U.S.?
So there were too many to name, but I have to say that like my fellow panelists have mentioned, the language barrier and just people assuming that because you have an accent that you're dumb or you don't know what you're talking about, or just shutting their brain to the point where they can't understand you, even though you're speaking English in a manner that is understood. So that was a huge challenge, I think, for my family. For me, coming to this country as a young child, getting used to the school system, getting used to the culture, it was just a culture shock. And then in addition to that, I became an advocate and an interpreter for every single member of my family, which I want to say worked to my advantage when it had to do with schoolwork and school stuff, because I would just tell my mom to sign something that she didn't understand and thought it was something great, but it wasn't. But she herself struggled tremendously. My mother had a very difficult time adjusting to the way of life in the United States, because in our country, she had a very lucrative job. And, you know, she came to this country and started working as in housekeeping at the Sheraton Hotel. I remember it like it was yesterday. It seemed like she was always working. We didn't see much of her. And, but she did it with pride. She always just said that earning a living, you know, the pride, I remember her coming and just saying, you know, you have to work hard and you will be successful. When she came home from work and she was exhausted, and then she had to come home and make dinner and prepare meals for the next day because she wouldn't be there for those meals. I never really realized that we were poor. Because I came from a country where poverty looked nothing like what poverty was growing up in the United States. I felt blessed. I felt rich. I felt like we never went without. And but as I grew older, I realized how underprivileged we were. So, yeah, those were some of the challenges.
Thank you for sharing. So I like the final question. So we're all going to answer the final question because I think it ends on a really great note. And then we're going to open it up to audience members watching this. So please put in the chat any questions that you have and we will get to them. But question number 6 for all of you. How do you maintain a connection to your family's heritage and pass on appreciation to the next generation? It says of women, but I think women and men and children. I would love to answer that. I already have written down that there's a German bakery in Peabody that I need to visit. So I'm taking down any tips you have about how you make a connection to your family's heritage and how you pass it on. And Saratine, do you need to go first?
Yes, absolutely. Thank you so much, Maureen. So my children are heavily involved in everything that I do, whether it's involved in the community and just with the work that I do in the community. I did mention earlier, I've been living in Wakefield since 2014 initially we moved to Wakefield, my husband and I, with my 4 children, 2 adult children now, and 2 young children that are in the school system in Wakefield. I include them in everything that I do. And it's cultural celebration that aren't commonly celebrated in the United States, that are celebrated in Latin American countries. We celebrate, and I educate them about what the nature of the event, what it's about, and why we celebrate it, and why it's important for us to continue that tradition, because we're living in the United States. They know that they are American. What they may forget is that they are also from these foreign countries, these immigrant countries, that they started as a result of me coming from another country. So I want to make sure that they never forget that. I like to think that they have the best of both worlds, because even though it's exhausting for me as a parent, we celebrate twice as many like holidays and celebrations and customs that keep our culture alive. For example, like we celebrate 3 Kings Day every year. International Women's Day is big for us, and we take the opportunity to identify people in our country, women in our country that from the Dominican Republic that have made an impact internationally, like the Miramal sisters. They're called, there's a movie that I recommend that you guys watch. Salma Hayek is the main character, and it's The Days of the Butterflies. And it's about these 3 sisters that from the Dominican Republic that ended a dictatorship. Ended up losing their life as a result of it, but they were such an impactful trio. There was a fourth sister as well, but the three sisters are featured in the movie. Anyway, I recommend that anyone watch it, and they are from the Dominican Republic. And when we celebrate International Women's Day in Latin America, we think about the Miramal sister, las mariposas, as they call them. We also talk about our history, the history of my family, the history of all Dominican that have made a significant contribution to the Dominican Republic and our freedom. And yes, I mean, I take any opportunity. And I also want to add that coming to the United States was I am so grateful and appreciative to be in this country, because not only was I exposed to a different culture, but I was exposed to more Latin American and minority women and people of different countries in this melting pot. So I am very proud to be a citizen of the United States now. And everything that I do revolves around creating opportunities for other immigrants, for other minorities, and for just, I don't know, people in the United States, because I love this country.
Thank you so much. Cindy, same question.
I think kind of going along with what she just said, we celebrate, a lot of holidays, especially like Chinese New Year. So we try to recreate the dishes that you wouldn't be able to get at a restaurant. So my family have found, a Facebook group specific to the village that my parents are from on Facebook. And there's a lot of people all over publishing like recipes they've made from that village in particular. I bring our kids to go eat dim sum in Chinatown. We have, traditional Chinese meals, family style, and my boys wear like traditional Chinese New Year outfits to school. They did last year. Then this year I wasn't going to have them wear it, but then they actually asked me about it and wanted to wear it. And then my boys also right now, going back to actually someone asked, is it important for us to know, our kids to know the language? They're going to Mandarin. I don't speak Mandarin. My dialect is Cantonese. But it's kind of opened a bridge for them to kind of, associate themselves to something that's as close as I can get them to. And their teacher is actually from Shanghai. So I think that's, kind of how we're trying to like pass the heritage of my culture down. But more importantly, this is my first time reflecting on all of this, which is why I'm so emotional about it. But, even create, like, I kind of took on the part that, I need to put on documentation for my whole family that, what are the names of our uncles and aunts? And, maybe find them on Facebook like some of you have, which we've never done. So, it was as much of a project that I had to ask some of my family some of these questions that they don't understand. They can't answer. And maybe it's goes to show how much, a part of us are, how disconnected we are from, something that other families can answer so easily.
Yeah, I think that's a great thing to share, right? I think it is. It's also so much of us are immigrants and kids of immigrants, families of immigrants are struggling with survival mode, that it's hard to maintain that, right? And we're trying to assimilate. And so what's the balance between kind of holding on to the old and then assimilating to where you are? Stephanie, Teresa, and then Summer, to this question, I will ask you to be a little succinct because I want to get to the audience questions, but how do you maintain a connection to your family's heritage?
Okay, we are proudly bilingual and bicultural, as anyone who knows us knows. I made my children go to a school an extra day every Saturday, 3 hours of German school I think in my son's case, it was 12 years. Not going to lie, they did not super enjoy it at the time. They appreciate it now. They can communicate. There was no way I was going to have a situation where they weren't going to be able to communicate with my grandmother, who did not speak English. They have cousins in Germany that they are close to. I don't see them, and the pandemic obviously did not help, but they have been over there to visit. And I also share my history with my students. I'm actually right now wearing a bracelet that one of my third graders made for me in German colors. And I told her I would wear this tonight. The other thing that I'm wearing, and I'm not sure if you can see this, is a pin. It's a Garnet Pin that was handed to me from my grandmother. We share the same birth month. We have the same birthstone. It's a garnet. And the part that we also can't forget is the negative part of our history. And, it is very important to us. When my children signed up to register to vote, one of the things that I said at the time was never forget that your grandmother, the first election that your grandmother ever voted in was the last free election in Germany for 12 years. We do not forget that. We know we are aware of that part of our history, and that is part of who we are as well. So that's could probably go on a little bit, but I want to make sure the other people get to talk.
No, thank you. Thank you for sharing that.
You want me to go?
Yes, please.
Okay, so for us, the language, obviously, that has been a major thing in my house. My husband is from Guatemala. So our family, we learn about all the cultures. So Guatemala, Chile, we celebrate the Independence Day. So we have a lot to celebrate in September because both Independence Days are the same month. We go to most of the events, Chilean events there in Boston, or anything that's related, the dances and everything like that. My son knows when festivals are happening in Chile because my mom keeps up with all that stuff. So whenever he visits, all the channel is always playing the news, all the events, all the shows. He knows comedians that are from Chile, music. So we have been very lucky that we have been able to kind of keep the language going, but it has been a struggle. Especially when my son was younger, he was very hesitant to speak Spanish. He was very embarrassed that I would speak to him in public in a different language because he didn't want all the kids to know, even though obviously everybody knew. But it was just, so it was hard to kind of keep that going for a while. Now I think he sees it. I think he's a little more positive about it because he has heard kids speak other languages. So I think that has opened up a little more of him to feel comfortable that he knows another language. But it's like two different worlds, right? He goes to school and then he comes home and then he's with my family. But I think that's a good thing. And I think when he's an adult, he probably is going to appreciate it more. I think now he just feels it's a little like nagging on my part to kind of keep the language going. But I think it will be a benefit for him in the long run.
Definitely. And Summer.
Yeah. Again, we do celebrate all the holidays here, and I do dress up my religion, my tradition, clothes, except the pants. I'm supposed to wear a skirt or something. I do the pants. I like them. It's different. And my kids, I took my kids 4 years back home to learn the language and to see the culture and the society over there. And every time I told them we're home, they said, no, that's your home. Our home is in Boston. So I came home with them here to United States again because it's their home. They were born here, raised here. But I just have one thing. This nowadays, it's different than long time ago, like in the 90s. Now the people more appreciate, and the kids, the new generation, they knows that's they're different people from different countries. Like my daughter, she comes home, she's not like, oh, we're here, we're different, no. She liked the idea of being from other countries. She liked the idea she's speaking another language. All my kids, because they think it's cool. The kids in the school, they think it's cool. The teacher too encourage the kids to accept other kids from outside. That's what I like now. Like, it's not like long time ago when I used to send now she's 20 years old, with the sandwich look different than their sandwich, and they start like, what is that? Why are you eating the sandwich? Why it look like different than us? So now they wanna, oh, what's that? It look yummy. What's in it? This is like a small example. Now it's different. A new generation, they're more open.
I think the world is smaller, and I think the new generation is right. It is cool. Everything we talked about is cool. Speaking different languages, eating different food. So yes, I think society is catching up, and kids realize, and hopefully everyone realizes the benefit. So thank you, my five panelists, for being here. I'm going to put a request out to folks. We have some questions in the chat that we will get to really quickly, but I also am just asking everyone who's participating is to think about how you can help to break the biases against women whose families immigrated to the U.S. And if you've got any ideas, please put them. There we go. Thank you for sharing the screen. Please put them in the chat. Think about what you and your family, you and your parents, or you and your children could do to break the biases against women. So I have one question. We've actually got a couple of questions. And if anyone feels like answering, just speak away. We don't need to go through everyone, but if anyone has a quick answer. So the first question is from my friend Cassie, who's 10 years old. And she said, do any of you feel that people treated you differently when they know you are not originally from the US?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, that is Cassie. There's your answer. And then we have another question that are from my friends John and Lorraine. I saw in the chat that John actually wrote this, but so John says, on 2 occasions, I praised the work of colleagues from other countries who are women, one from India, one from China. It was just ordinary positive feedback. Thanks for the thorough review of my first draft on the computer manual. But each woman reacted with great gratitude. I'd made friends for life. Is it so unusual for professional women in other countries to get praised for their work?
Yes.
Yes.
There you go. Those are 2 questions. I am looking, Eileen, I'm going to ask you, do we have any other questions?
We do. We have a couple more. So one, do you have any suggestions for us as community members to be more open and available to our community members from other countries?
Yeah.
That's a hard one.
Yeah, I do. Hello?
If I might make a suggestion, it might be nice. We have a lot of great community events in Wakefield, but could we maybe have one that incorporates other countries, that go beyond the majority of the countries of origin? I don't know how to put this. I think what I would like to see, we have at the school where I teach, we have a multicultural festival, and every year we see how much the kids enjoy sharing their culture and how proud they are. I really agree with what Summer said about, kids being much more open, and I basically tell my students, listen, I'm an immigrant myself. I want you to read a book in your language. I have books in your language. I want you to... And I work with some other teachers to make this festival happen. If Wakefield could do something similar to that, that's something I would love to see. I know that the schools do that to some extent, but and it would be fantastic to see that community-wide.
do want to invite everyone to, participate in events that the library puts on, that the Human Rights Commission puts on. The Human Rights Commission has been doing more and more events. It looks like there's an AAPI commemoration coming up in April and May, which is Asian American Pacific Islander and Hispanic Heritage month or day will be celebrated again in September, October. Last year was the first event. It was probably my favorite event of ever living in Wakefield. I thank Teresa and her family for really taking the lead on that. But if you're outside of the library, there was singing and dancing and flags from all countries. It was really a fiesta, I'm going to say. And so I'm looking forward to that again. So I think there are opportunities. I think get involved, find other people. I think, asking people about their culture, it's something we all love talking about. Ask about food, ask about their language, ask about their homes. I think as we get out of this pandemic, people ask about books from their, books of authors from their country. The good and the bad, right? We talked about some of the bad history, but it's important to talk about all of that. That makes us all who we are. So I think have those conversations is the way to break the bias. Eileen, I know I'm looking at time. Do we have one more question to wrap up?
Yes. We've got such great questions. So thanks everybody for submitting them. Maybe the last one, when you've taken your children to your family's country of origin, what did they notice and comment upon? And Samara, I think you mentioned that you brought your family back for a year and they were, saying that their home was in Boston. What did they maybe sort of comment upon?
Yeah, I went to Jordan for 4 years to teach my kids the language and to let them see the culture and the society, and to meet my mom and their families from both sides. But unfortunately, my kids didn't like it. They didn't like it at all. I don't know what went wrong there, but they said it's not like home. So I was like, we're home. The first answer was, my kids were like 6 and 4. They said, this is your home, not our home. So that's the sentence that make me realize that I'm like making my kids immigrant to other country. So I was like, no. I called my husband that year and I said, no, my kids is gonna go back to Boston because I want them to grow up there. The thing is, my kids too, they treat them like immigrants there, like because they don't speak Arabic. They don't understand Arabic really well. The same problem I had with English, my kids have with Arabic.
Right.
And it was really tough. And the food was different. The food in United States, it has so much flavor, which is, we call it a lot of sugars. I don't know. It kind of, when I came here, I didn't like the food taste. Even the bread has sugar in it. But my kids loved the taste here. They didn't like the taste back home. This is like very simple as it is, like to the point, to the candy, to the streets, to the buildings. The only thing they like, I think, it's my mom.
Mm-hmm.
That's I as someone whose parents took her back to Pakistan when we were younger, I always tell people I never felt so American as when I was in Pakistan, and I never felt as Pakistani as when I'm in America.
Yes, exactly.
So that's kind of, being dual identities and trying to balance it both. So I
just wanted to add one thing.
Go for it.
The one thing that my son always talks about, so we travel a lot and we go to Guatemala and Chile a lot. He loves going there and he loves the food. And actually we eat a lot more sugar, I think, in Chile than here. So if you can imagine that, he loves all that stuff. But one thing he always mentions about the dogs. So one thing that I don't think about, but here there's not that many like stray dogs like on the street. But wherever we travel, there's a lot of them. There's a lot of just dogs that just live and, and everybody takes care of them, but they live on the street. And that's one thing that always breaks my son's heart. Whenever we go visit, that there's just so many animals just kind of roaming around with no home. So that's something that you don't think about, when you live here, but it's just kind of like a culture shock for him. So we wanted to add that.
Thank you for sharing that story. So I want to thank all of our panelists, Cindy, Stephanie, Teresa, Summer, and Sedatine. Thank you for your honesty and your bravery and for sharing your stories with all of us. I want to thank everyone who watched us and who watched us live. And I just want to say that this presentation has been recorded and will be on demand viewing for those unable to attend this evening. So the link will be available on both the WACT and the Wakefield Human Rights Commission Facebook pages. Once again, I'd like to thank the Wakefield Human Rights Commission for putting this on. Thank you to the library who helped, and always thank WCAT for putting on a great program. We're going to say good night and please go break the bias, and happy International Women's Day, everyone.